Game Science has released their final trailer for Black Myth Wukong, and it's clear how the gaming community feels on this one. Now we finally have this last trailer, and the overall feel and tone of it tells me we're getting something incredibly special. From the gathered news and coverage we've gotten so far, we know it's been fully playable for a long time. Based on how good this game looks here in the final trailer, it's clear Game Science has spent not just months, but years polishing and making it truly worthy of being a next-gen game. We're getting bleeding-edge graphical fidelity presented to us with a magical and mythological tone. All of this, the Destined One's transformations, magical spells, the beautiful environments, and the truly unique characters and enemies are presented to us through a fantastical Chinese lens that I'm going to break down here with my 5 big takeaways about what we saw. Let's jump onto the hype train for Game Science's Black Myth Wukong and dive into the trailer. Not a boss rush. A highlight of several of Black Myth Wukong's official trailers and gameplay clips have been the bosses. A concern for some, myself included, was that Black Myth Wukong might actually be a boss rush game, in which we would battle through boss after boss with little of an actual world to explore and regular enemies to battle. However, the first full minute of the final trailer here has quickly put that concern to rest as we get to see 6 different biomes fully rendered with an incredible lighting system. What is revealed are incredibly detailed and vibrant environments littered with paths to traverse. A few months ago, NVIDIA and Game Science released a YouTube video showing off what ray tracing will look like. The captures were in-engine footage and left us with a tranquil feel as the camera moved through the environments. Now that we have these 2 videos, it's clear we're not only going to journey through multiple environments, but they're each going to have a distinct feel, all leaving the gamer with a sense of wonder and curiosity at uncovering the Chinese mythology of this story. Good storytelling needs to have pacing that allows the viewer, or in our case the gamer, to have balance. It's obvious the highlights of Black Myth Wukong has always been the bosses, as mentioned earlier. All of Game Science's trailers have made that very clear. We're going to get frenetic and intense boss battles that allow for some really creative gameplay opportunities. But the collective thought of those gamers eagerly anticipating the game is that these boss encounters look tough, gripping, and could even possibly leave the gamer feeling a sense of attrition. But here is a game based on one of the 4 pillars of great classic novels of Chinese literature, inspired by a story of exploration, a true journey, and Game Science's own spin on Journey to the West. Their spin on this classic Chinese novel will leave us with plenty of lore and discovery for us to partake in, and these will come in the calm moments, the moments we navigate through the world, albeit a linear one, and that's one of the potential highlights this game will have to offer. I'd much rather have an almost curated linear experience where each of my character interactions and in-universe discoveries are impactful and meaningful to my character's growth. And as mentioned with any great story, there will be pacing and balancing. The detail of the environments and the vast areas shown in this trailer tell us there will be more to navigate along the Destined One's path than simply narrow roads between bosses. It's clear we're getting more than that, more than just a boss rush. Trails, paths, and the unknown to truly explore the world Game Science has created in environments dripping with mood and an overall mythical feel that was marvelous to see in this trailer. Combat. I think most everyone who has been following the development of this game has heard Game Science state that Black Myth Wukong is not a Souls-like. To go a bit deeper beyond this statement, we know that there is an emphasis on dodging, and I believe there is actually no parry system. Players are instead encouraged to dodge, jump, and roll around the battlefield. The moves we see the Destined One deploy are so numerous and impressive that I can honestly say the variety in which we will be able to approach enemies and bosses is looking to be something unprecedented in action video games. As the trailer transitions from showing environments into gameplay, we get an immediate dive into action with smoke emanating from the Chosen One, followed by a spark of fire. Earlier, we saw our protagonist gain a fire-infused staff from what looks like a defeated enemy clinging to life in the foreground. In earlier trailers released on NVIDIA's YouTube page, we also saw the hero defeat an enemy and become rewarded with an electrical staff. So we know the staff is going to be infused with different elements. But coming back to the fire staff, we can see it being wielded from the middle right here, giving off a Darth Maul kind of vibe. And then finally, we see this low-level enemy just obliterated with a fire foot to the face. I'm really not sure if it's his foot that hits this enemy or part of the staff twirling forward, but this charging technique gives me some Mass Effect Vanguard vibes, and I know I'm going to be spamming the heck out of this ability as it looks like it's going to leave devastating damage and be quite an addictive power to use. Game Science has confirmed that all 72 transformations of Sun Wukong in one form or another will appear in the game, with some transformations being achieved by defeating bosses, basically stealing their ability upon defeat. We've seen some of these transformations or powers in different gameplay clips and trailers already, such as living without a head, cloning oneself, possessing great strength, and breathing fire, just to name a few. I love this concept. While skill points are fun, the storytelling possibilities of overcoming an extremely challenging boss, capturing, then achieving that boss's transformative powers, basically stealing their power, is something quite unique, and just the thought of that leaves us feeling godlike in the wake of a boss's defeat. As we continue through the trailer, the next two transformations of the Destined One show we'll have various and unique approaches to combat at our disposal. Just the design itself is so unique. Where we see our hero, his legs a scorched black and some twinkles of golden-orange inlaid scars along his lower torso and legs. Then, as we look up, we're obstructed by an obscene and almost grotesque sack of matter. But we've seen this before. If we jump out of this final trailer and take a look at one of the videos posted again on NVIDIA's YouTube page, we can see a boss battle between two rock formation monsters occurring. We see one of these monsters at the end of the final trailer as well. But as we jump again back out and into the NVIDIA trailer, we can see the Destined One has also taken on this form. Later on in the trailer, we see hints of how powers are achieved, as the souls of enemies are sucked into the Destined One's drinking gourd. So to achieve this rock formation, the hero has probably needed to defeat one of these rock enemies, gain their ability through sucking in its soul, then summoning the transformation by drinking from the bottle gourd. So back to the trailer, we see the hero takes on this form primarily to become a solid, strong mass that he can plunge forward or downward as into his enemies. Jumping back to the NVIDIA trailer one more time, but just a little earlier, we can see a similar form taken on by the hero. It looks somewhat similar, but instead of a rock mass, it is more sea creature and crustacean-like. And as it downs the electrical dragon, the hero simply walks up to one of the dragon's electricity cells attached to its back, then, kind of hysterically, just falls downward onto it, taking out the electrical cell, but also at the same time, impacting the mass surrounding the hero, allowing his true monkey form to be revealed once more. Alright, now going back to the final trailer, we can see the rock navigate the same environment. The clip is capped off by him jumping to avoid the dragon tail, and then it pounds downward with an area of effect attack, pulsating outward. But in this form, the rock mass does not crumble as did the crustacean-like mass before. The next transformation seems to be a larva of some type. It lashes out a neon green line across the tall ant-like enemy. And then the last move we see the larvae transformation unleash is a green area-clearing attack of energy. But as the pulse lands, an energy wave is returned to the Destined One, as if leeching energy from the enemies. This transformation is one of the greatest parts of the trailer. Video games should be fun, and Game Science is definitely bringing the fun as the hero is simply throwing snowballs and then a pretty huge snow boulder at the enemies. It's quite hard to tell what this transformation is inspired from, but I immediately got Yellow Jacket vibes with the two shoulder protrusions. And I love how this tells us we're going to be able to interact with the environment as the Destined One unleashes a flurry of snowballs at these enemies. I do want to pause it right here because if you look up the hill to the left, we see dozens of enemies littered along the snow. The nature of these enemies don't really seem to be to impose a strong force, but due to the ease in which the hero is dispatching them in the foreground, it appears at least some of the low-level enemies' purpose is to give us a chance to experiment with newly acquired transformations. If you think of the sheer number of transformations and the depth to the combat mechanics of each transformation we're seeing in this trailer, we're going to need time in between big boss battles to try out using the various transformations we gain. So in addition to exploring environments to uncover lore and continue unraveling the story, it seems a lot of the progression of the biomes and levels will serve the purpose of allowing us time to experiment with newly acquired abilities, spells, and transformations. As we slam downward and transition into the next transformation, we see a huge yoked-out wolf with horns. As the wolf, we get to wield a different weapon, what looks like a huge sword, but because of our size, we're able to wield it one-handed. I haven't read anywhere about all of the confirmed weapons, but it appears each transformation has an alternate weapon or form of attack other than our traditional staff. The gameplay cuts to the same wolf transformation, but we see it in a better light. I simply cannot believe the quality of how well this game looks. Man, I cannot wait, guys. Checking out the wolf form again, now wielding the sword, holding the hilt backwards like Darth Revan as he arches forward breathing fire is absolutely amazing to look at. The final clip of this transformation sees the wolf unleashing a firestorm of flurry in this cave, no doubt home to the same spider we saw earlier. Fire breathing seems like something that will be available in many different facets, and then it's topped off here by going nuclear. The Destined One gathers energy to discharge a huge blast that leaves the scene in a devastated blaze of destruction. We now see the protagonist do a body shift, leaving behind a duplicate. We know this is a straight one-to-one inspired ability taken from Journey to the West, as Sun Wukong can leave duplicates of himself at will. And this ability has already been seen in combat gameplay clips released earlier by Game Science. But what we haven't seen yet is how fluid the transformations from the monkey form to other forms can occur, telling us we're going to be able to chain together very fast-paced combos. This first one sees the Monkey King in his regular form quickly shift into the large blue Buddha character, leaving this tiger serpent bashed backwards. The Destined One's acquisition of this ability is shown later in the trailer. Upon the large Buddha's defeat, the Destined One's gourd bottle, while elevated in the air, glows a faint turquoise. Then, while floating above, like a black hole, sucks in the very essence of the defeated enemy. Okay, before jumping back into the combat, I just want to pause it here. Look at the entire screen for a moment. This and pretty much any shot from this trailer could be made into a piece of wall art. Just print it out, man, put it on a wall. Everything about this game is just so gorgeous. So as it continues, it looks like we got a cross between the giant caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland and a golden gilded Buddha. So freaking magical to see. The fire attack being used here is different from before. Instead of being breathed from the Destined One's mouth, the flames are being shot off in salvos, kind of like a weapon. If we pause and look closely, we can see him holding a cylinder, so I'm thinking this is not the horned wolf transformation we saw earlier, but something entirely different, perhaps a different type of weapon, something like a fire spitter used for ranged attacks. The next clip is something quite telling. So the character we're controlling is a form we have not seen before. If I pause it here, it does look like a wolf, but it's thinner and darker than the one we saw earlier. And then the last thing we see this form do is a disappearing shift to get to the backside of the enemy in a move reminiscent to what we saw Eve do with her blink ability in this year's earlier release, Stellar Blade. The hero then evades backwards and we get this really cool realm shift where we see the form of what looks like a monk, a la the shaved head and beaded necklace. It would be pretty messed up if we killed some monks and took their abilities, so I'm thinking in addition to conquering enemies to take their abilities through combat, we can also be taught abilities by NPCs littered throughout our campaign. Game Science has confirmed we will be able to overcome enemies through dialogue, so perhaps the monk ability is achieved through persuasion instead of death. The next transformation shows a pretty beefy stone-colored ogre lashing out with a long and thin sword. It doesn't quite look like a samurai's katana, but it is thinner than the great sword we saw earlier. In the next clip, we are battling a scorpion enemy. We get to see something like a spiked shield. It's hard to tell if this protects us because we cannot see the HUD, and if the destined one takes any damage or not. But when the spikes protrude, there is a pulse of energy directed outward, so it could be an offensive attack that simply does not hit the enemy. The final shot of this clip shows our hero stretched outward and hit the enemy square on. It's difficult to tell if this is the staff. We've seen it have the ability to be stretched outward to an almost infinite length, so it could be the staff protruding forward to hit the enemy. This clip shows what I think is an organic weapon that is fused to the protagonist's hands. I believe this is a transformation obtained from defeating the praying mantis enemy we see towards the end of the trailer. Upon defeating it, we would achieve a praying mantis-inspired transformation that appears to absolutely wreck. Because a praying mantis has forearms with protruded pointing ends, it would make sense the protagonist would have hands infused with scythes. When slowed down, you can see the hero lash outward with what appears to be neon green scythes, but there are moments when slowed down more and paused that they appear to actually be protruding from his hands themselves. And then we get a look at yet another transformation used smoothly in combat as the hero evades backwards, avoiding an extremely devastating blow from a massive greatsword. The transformation is just so buttery. As you can see, after the evade, the hero shifts into a white tiger. You can see the white fur and what looks like a mane. As this transformation, we're wielding two swords, leaving an energy path that swirls around the enemy as it's impacted on both the target and the surrounding environment. And this clip shows us how we're going to be implementing stealth into the gameplay. We know that the Destined One will be able to turn invisible, and it looks like it's going to be really fun in how we actually deploy that ability. The giant enemy initially has its back to us, looking down in the snow, scanning for our position, and as it turns to see us, we perform a quick move with our staff to turn invisible. The giant enemy looks in our direction, and we are no longer there. The combat possibilities and approach to how we tackle enemies, as made apparent through all of these transformations and abilities, has me floored. Game Science talked about replayability and approaching enemies in various and creative ways, so just by what was made evident in this trailer's combat clips, it's clear we're all going to be playing this game for quite a while. Characters and enemies. The final trailer revealed some truly epic-looking cutscenes, and we are introduced to some really unique-looking characters, the first of which is this masked enemy here. On NVIDIA's official YouTube channel, one of their posts contains about a 20-second clip of the hero battling this masked person. In the video, the masked enemy speaks, but unfortunately the conversation is in Mandarin and there is no English translation. However, we can gather a little bit about this character as he seems pretty mischievous, as he's laughing while talking to the hero. I'm really happy we're going to get a slew of different vibes from enemies we see. A fair amount of them have an epic grandeur to them, while others seem more abstract or dark, and some, as in this case, give off a more rascallian nature. Here we get our first look at what appears to be the mentor archetype we will have to guide us on our journey. He is most likely scribing an incantation on the hero's gourd bottle, so when he drinks from it, we can activate the spell. This is such a cool way to access spells, and I love to see the Chinese-inspired culture of having the hero drink from a gourd they can carry around. We see this character later at the end of the trailer advising the hero. I'm a little bit new to Journey to the West, so I'm not sure if the mentor here is a specific character from the story or an entirely new mentor figure Game Science has created, but I love the sound and rate of his voice.
Dark-furred, devious nature, hunting that guai is no simple task. You do have some skills, but this
It's clear the mentor is powerful. He's created an impenetrable circular boundary protection spell, negating any attacks from oncoming enemies. And we've also seen the hero use this skill, the fire circle, in the NVIDIA clip, so this demonstrates it'll be something we can eventually learn from the mentor during our journey. And I love how chill he is, simply drinking tea with the destined one. Yum cha. To contrast the mentor, we also get to see the Dark Shadow Self archetype character. This dark woman was seen in an earlier cinematic trailer that Game Science released several months ago. It depicted a courtyard held by a family consisting of an extremely aged mother and several of her daughters. In it, there is a conversation between the daughters about their mother. The mother seems to be marrying a long-lost lover, some daughters believing they should honor her wishes in her old age, and some believing they should not. However, there is something mysterious at play here as we are viewing everything in first person, presumably as they captured the groom-to-be. But what adds to this mystery is the appearance of this shadowed woman. She makes a comment to a couple of the sisters, but in a sinister manner she also speaks with a spider crawling on her hand. As the scene continues, our first-person view as the groom moves through the courtyard and the extremely aged mother, the bride, is revealed. This trailer ends, but we are left with a tag at the end, a jump cut to the future, and we see a huge spider has webbed most of the courtyard. Presumably it has wreaked havoc on the area, and we are left with a chilling scream from a woman shouting. This makes me think the shadowed woman here left her spider in the courtyard. It must have the ability to grow and shrink due to the woman's magical abilities. But clearly the spider crawling on her hand earlier and this spider are meant to be viewed as one in the same. Coming back to the final trailer, as we see her shrouded in darkness, it's pretty safe to assume she's taking on a villain role. I'm guessing this woman is going to be a threat throughout the game, as we see spiders in several places in this trailer. She could conjure, control, and possibly even take on the form of a giant or humanoid spider that we might battle as the game gets into the second and third acts. I'm almost certain the rodent character here is the destined one already transformed. If we go a little further into the trailer, we see a larger version of this same character coming out of the ground. The size and look of this character tells us this is an enemy or a boss. In one of the earlier trailers, we see this enemy and the destined one transformed as the rodent looking at each other. So perhaps our hero overcomes this enemy by means of disguise. This might be a gameplay element in which the hero can take the form of an enemy, then try to move past them. We saw a similar thing occur with the rock enemies before, so this disguise type approach to getting past enemies could be an alternate option to fighting. This man seems likely an ally, another archetype of mythical stories. We're not getting party companions, but this is most likely an ally that shares information with the hero or presents us with a task. The humanoid dragon and tiger appear to be in a vulnerable state, but seem to be defeated, most likely by our hero who is about to take their form. Perhaps the dragon and tiger enemies are fearing the same end result of the blue Buddha character we saw earlier. That's a pretty nasty way to go out, knowing you're dead, but your essence will live on to be used by a person you were just killed by. And then definitely one of the highlights for me is this little guy. I really hope this little Buddha baby is going to be an ally. I can't imagine striking him down in battle. It would be really sad and devastating. But at the same time, if we do have to battle him, I cannot wait to see what abilities he has. Game Science has shown just how creative they can get with what they've cooked up, and I'm sure they would be able to create some really unique baby attacks fitting for this guy to start popping off with. But like I said, I really hope he's an ally that we'll be fighting on our side with. He's already offered us this watermelon, so I'm really hoping the Destined One can plop down and share a snack with this little guy. One thing that's got me excited when I look at this character is that I see it holding a mask. Because it seems like we'll be taking the powers, weapons, and transformations from characters, it might be that we even take the clothes and masks of enemies we defeat. Taking other people's drip would be a really motivating aspect of beating an enemy. We can see an enemy decked out in accessories or clothing, defeat them, then don their gear ourselves. This winged character seems to be the same enemy as the one we see in the penultimate shot before the 4 great heavenly kings, as it's wielding the same glowing red sword. But what is freaking amazing about this character's design is that if we pause it right here, take a look at its head. Just above his yellow cloak, he's got a giant red hand in place of a head. I mean, come on, Game Science, you guys are crushing it. This is so creative and such a fascinating yet macabre look. This looks like the character from earlier that we saw with the third eye. I'm guessing this boss battle takes place inside the courtyard just beyond the door that it opens. This looks like a mount we'll be able to fly around on, but this might simply only be a cutscene. I'm kinda thinking we don't get mounts due to all of the transformations we'll have access to. We've already got confirmation of the cicada transformation. I mean, if we can transform as a flying cicada, there would be no need for a flying mount. And mounts might not only be redundant, but also unnecessary since this is more of a linear game, not an open world which would necessitate an animal to ride around on. As we pass through a couple more transformations, one we saw earlier of the larvae, and another of what looks like a humanoid bull, but this gives off the same macabre feeling we got earlier with the hand for head enemy, due to this more skeletal structure. Next we see an enemy stand off against the destined one in first-person view, and it's got a more traditional demon look. We see it wielding 2 swords in what is most likely a showdown with our hero. The length of the horns protruding from the ends of its mouth look terrifying and really cap off the demon aesthetics. And then this large blue animal with the gold flaked back most likely is another transformation. If it is our hero, it seems to contradict the need for mounts yet again, as we're seeing what seems to be either an elephant or a rhino, possibly a mix between the two, running at full speed, traversing a ton of space, putting an end to a need to have mounts in this game. And then the final money shot of the trailer reveals the 4 great heavenly kings. I do know that these kings are generally protectors, but I'm not sure if Game Science's story is taking a more God of War inspired direction and showing the gods in a different light, in making them more flawed and almost false gods. But they're definitely shown here in an imposing way, revealing that they will be our main antagonists. We were left with a similar shot at the end of the cinematic trailer released a couple of months ago, in which the hero stands off against giant versions of the 4 heavenly kings. With the end of this final trailer, we're given another representation of this showdown, and when I first saw this, I was left speechless. I truly cannot believe what Game Science is giving us with this game. I'm so thrilled at this trailer, as it's basically assured us of the magnificence of this game. Okay, I want to talk more about my thoughts with this final shot, so let's get into our next big takeaway, the story. Just imagine how amazing it will be to take on each of the 4 heavenly kings throughout the story. I doubt Game Science is showing us anything beyond the second act of this game in the trailer, meaning although I think these 4 are going to be the final baddies that we have to eventually overcome, I do think this scene is taken from an earlier moment in the game. We still don't know if we are playing as Sun Wukong, the Monkey King himself. I don't believe Game Science has officially stated this. It could be possible we're playing as a monkey inspiring to be Sun Wukong, or we play as Sun Wukong after being struck down by the 4 heavenly kings. We'll obviously be going on a hero's journey and we'll be fighting enemies to unlock both new weapons and abilities and powers. But if we are Sun Wukong, a god, then there needs to be a reason as to why we're basically building up the powers Sun Wukong is known for. Perhaps at the start of the story, taking a cue from Journey to the West, Sun Wukong shows arrogance and the 4 heavenly kings cast Sun Wukong down and he must start from nothing. This would lead to the opening moments of the game playing as Sun Wukong fully stacked with most to all of his abilities. Similar to how the Metroid Prime games usually start with Samus fully equipped only to be knocked down and lose all of her powers at the start of the game. Perhaps we see a parallel here and we start as Sun Wukong. He displays some arrogance and is reprimanded by the 4 great heavenly kings seen here. Our journey entails us being humbled by the gods, but also on a quest to seek vengeance against them, possibly learning humility and also regaining his humanity and godhood on his road to redemption. Being struck down by the gods could not only be a physical thing, but also affect our protagonists mentally. The official Black Myth Wukong page on PlayStation's website states that we will be uncovering the obscured truth along our journey. There are moments in the trailer that we see characters anticipating or knowing things about the hero. For example, this character, the horned ogre-looking individual with the third eye, expects the Destined One's presence as made evident by him opening the door before he can even knock on it. The Destined One could have had his memory wiped by the gods, and the story could be following the everyone is in on it trope of storytelling. Think of The Truman Show with Jim Carrey or M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, where everyone except the main protagonist in those movies was in on the big twist. With Black Myth Wukong, it seems to be clear something is being hidden from the hero in a similar fashion. In the launch date trailer, we hear a voiceover mocking the Destined One about this.
The Destined One.
The Destined One who doesn't even know what he's destined for?
Whether this is a result of him being stripped of everything, perhaps even his recollection of who he was from a time before or something else, it seems that we're going to have a lot of uncovering to do. Mystery presented through storytelling in a game that looks this good has really got me excited for the possibilities of where this story is going to go, and leads me into our last big takeaway from Black Myth Wukong's final trailer. Sound design and music. It's clear a lot of effort has gone into the sound design as we got to hear some incredibly rich effects presented to us, especially with relation to the magical creatures and effects of the game. The sound design was extremely noticeable in the opening shots of the environments, in particular within the forest biome, where we see the Ent-inspired stone creature just chillin' atop a small cliff. As soon as it starts to clap, you can hear a wonderful effect as its hands rub in closer proximity to each other until they finally connect in a soothing yet booming sound. And the music we got in this trailer has all the right feels. The opening clangs of the first song we hear fill each biome we see, complementing the tone and leaving us with a sense of wonder. As the trailer picks up and the protagonist descends inward in a flash of smoke, the traditional Chinese percussion instruments really add to this trailer gloriously popping off. Another standout moment in sound design we got to hear is when Sun Wukong has a moment of respite in the ice biome. Just listen to the sound effect of him putting his staff into his ear. That sound design is incredibly satisfying, rich, and again, just soothing to hear. And then my favorite music component to the trailer is right after this moment. The fox fans the flames and the music just goes in. My musical point of reference immediately went to Mongolian throat chanting, but Game Science have created something unique to their Chinese culture, and what we get is something with inspirations from the overall Asian diaspora, but unique to Chinese culture in its own right, resulting in this song from the amazing soundtrack we're going to get. I cannot play the music in this clip or else I would get demonetized, but the music I'm referring to starts right here. It's truly wonderful and tells us the soundtrack from Black Myth Wukong is gonna be a serious banger. Bonus: Magic of Chinese Culture. Finally, all of the inspiration from Journey to the West and Chinese culture that we saw in this final trailer is so welcome in the video game space. Chinese culture is borrowed heavily from in media, so I'm thrilled that a Chinese studio has created a game that will reveal to the world the rich mythology and traditions of that culture. I know the gaming world is going to lose their mind on launch date and will hopefully see the Destined One grow into a video game icon right here with Black Myth Wukong. Alright guys, that's all I got for this one. Thank you for joining me. Black Myth Wukong is less than 10 days away. I plan to cover the game's lore, story, characters, and more in future videos, and I look forward to having you there with me. For now, let me know down in the comments section what you are most excited for in Black Myth Wukong. I'll be jumping down into the comments section below to keep up the discussion with you all there. I truly appreciate your time. See you on the next one. Peace.